Hello, today Business Insider Nordic presents EU leak. Sweden has to adopt the euro by 2025. Frankfurter Allgemein has taken part of documents detailing plans to introduce the euro in all member countries by 2025, including Sweden. The leaked reflection paper outlines discussions between EU officials who met on Monday to prepare for an upcoming EU Commission meeting on the future of the euro on May 31st, writes SVT, that's Swedish mainstream channel. According to Frankfurter Allgemein, the officials discussed a target that would force all EU members to join the euro by 2025. The idea would be to give the EU Parliament democratic control over the euro area's fiscal policy as opposed to the current setup, where euro area finance ministers make decisions behind closed doors. But shortly after the leak became public, it was refuted by EU Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis, who took part in Monday's meeting. He claims the true purpose of the plan is to complete euro area cooperation, not to force member countries into the currency. Of course, we do encourage all member states to join as soon as they meet the prerequisites, but there is no specific time limit, Dombrovskis said, according to the news agency Direct. Under the EU treaty, Denmark would have the right to opt out if forced decision were to be taken. Additional EU countries without the euro are Czech Republic, Croatia, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania and Hungary. I think that was the article, because otherwise it goes on and on and on with other articles. I thought this was a little bit of an interesting subject to talk about. Sort of old now, I guess. No, not that really old. This was released May 22nd, 2017. Because we do know that the globalists wants to globalize currency. They want to globalize everything, race, cultures, everything, just to make everything one and the same. Then they will normalize and have their world government, basically. But first they need to impoverish us. So this article is interesting to say the least, but we should always be aware of the globalist plot, because they will always try to push agendas like these. Quite recently in Sweden we have started to change our money into new forms of paper and coin. It's still the crowns, but it has just changed, I guess, to make sure that old hidden money, people that have stolen and stuff, and make sure that we will have new fresh currency, basically. All the basic factors that goes into that. Though I think it's very sad for the old people that keeps their money into their own homes, that they have to take all of that money and go to the bank and risk getting robbed. So I don't know if it costs a lot of money to print out that much money. I think it's very devious if they would really try to force by 2025. I don't know if it could be a way to cause inflation/deflation, both which could be bad for the country, because the central banks are known to do that with their money production. So imagine if Sweden would have to change money in a few years after this, now that we have changed our currency. Then they would have to produce money again and take it to Sweden. Oh well, we have the central bank in Sweden, but never mind. And also, if you look at the other countries that have euros in their countries, and if you look how well their economy is doing, then they're sort of gone down quite heavily since they adopted the euros. And the only country that has been doing somewhat good is Germany. Because Germany, in fact, went down heavily as well, but then they have started to climb back up. So, yeah, I just don't see it as a good thing to adapt the euro. Plus, it gives some form of national pride to the countries. I think it's a good thing. I mean, if you go to different countries, you will find different currencies. For example, if you go to America, you find dollars, and you're like, oh, this is American money. And if you go to Denmark, you will find Denmark coins, and if you go to Sweden, you will have Swedish crowns, etc., etc. Unique crowns, it gives a culture enrichment to the countries rather than us having this smuggle money that way, rather than having to, people could just smuggle over borders and go to exchange currencies, would give more trouble for the thieves and bandits to cross borders and for money fraud. And I mean, this was quite an obvious thing, even for me when I was a child, when we had a vote to keep the Swedish crown or to adopt the euro. And I remember the Swedish Prime Minister, Göran Persson, he was very adamant that we would adopt the euro, that it would be foolish to keep the Swedish crown. But like I said about the other countries that adopted the euro, they had money problems. And well, don't forget Greece, poor Greece. It's chaotic. But one thing I wanted to finish off with, but I don't have too much to say about this subject because I hate money, literally. There's this single market, right? The single market basically is an open trade agreement amongst all member states in the European Union, and some certain exceptions for countries that's not in the European Union. That's Liechtenstein, Norway, and Iceland. They are still in the single market, but I think they may not have the same privileges as other countries. But basically what the single market does is that it removes tariffs between the countries. For example, if I buy something from America, I'm most likely gonna have to pay some form of tax because, well, maybe the production are different, maybe they just have some bullshit tariffs overall, and that's gonna be for me buying from some other country, etc., etc. Removing tariffs sounds very nice, right? Because then you can buy stuff from other European countries without having to pay some extra fine, because you probably don't care, you probably want a product. And business owners would also like this because then they can trade openly throughout Europe. So it sounds too good to be true, right? Which it is. It also promotes open borders, so people can move freely around Europe, which is dangerous for security reasons, as we have seen in recent years. And of course, these migrants that comes into the southern borders that claims they're Syrian refugees, but they're completely black and from Somalia, most of them. Well, turns out that the governments are pretty adamant to take them in as well. And once they're in Italy, they can just go to anywhere in Europe as they well please, because we have open borders. That's why we need border patrols, that's why we need something like a wall protecting us from intruders, invaders, or whatever you would wish to call them. So it's a huge downside with this. So I mean, what would you choose? Good trade or sacrificing your security? But you might argue, well, the British are leaving the European Union. So wouldn't this be horrible for them trading with the European Union? Well, I don't think it's impossible for them to create trade agreements with other countries, but because the globalists gonna hate this, they are gonna be as much of an asshole to them as much as possible. And also, I think the Brexit might mean that more countries will eventually leave the European Union. And as more countries leave the European Union, the single market will suffer hugely. They will suffer very much from this. And eventually everyone will have to pay so much it won't work. Because each and every single country has to pay billions and billions. I think it's 12 million pounds that the British paid. So you can imagine each and every single country having to pay a huge, enormous sum of money. So the question is it worth paying that money to save from the tariffs, etc.? Or could we possibly create some other better deal? And if you look at China, They're not in the European Union, but yet most of the products we buy are made in China. So that's an also interesting thing to look at, I think. But you know, people can argue on this all day, so basically I'm just gonna deliver some facts and points and gonna leave it at that. But I can tell you that if we're gonna stay in the European Union and be in these forced agreements where we can't even govern our own people because we have to follow laws from the European Union where they're gonna decide how much food we can grow, etc., all of these control things, we're gonna have a government on top of our own governments. It's not gonna bode well for us in the end, because eventually they will try to grab a hold of our entire countries. And the European Union has already put out to suggestion that they should form an European army, that every European country should dismantle our own armies and form into one giant European army. That would mean, basically, if one country would want to vote out from the European Union, and the European Union would be like, what are France thinking? Are they really gonna want to leave the European Union? We can't have that. Then they're gonna occupy that country. And when people vote, they will be kind of persuaded to vote to stay in the European Union. Anyways, that's how I see it. That's how the globalists want to gain total power. And also, after taking control of our armies, they will even take into more actions into big control freaks into our countries. They will eventually decide every single aspect, and they will start to replace humans with more and more AI. Because you should really watch the AI technology. It's just overwhelming how far they have advanced in that. And I mean, eventually people in factories will be completely unnecessary. And imagine the enormous unemployment rate. Because they already say that, even politicians, that humans won't be really necessary to be in work because we will have machines soon enough. So they promote this welfare blah 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 constantly, making sure that we humans will be dependent on the government, in which we give the government more power and we give them constantly more taxes because, well, we crave some men's tax because it's unfair wages between men and women, and you can imagine all of these things, and all of them add up, and eventually we won't be able to stand a chance to have a free society because they will decide what's right and what's wrong. Because as you notice, free speech today is hate speech. I mean, if someone comes and asks my thoughts and I'm gonna tell them, it's gonna be hate speech, even though they come and ask me. There's no tolerance. You have to be political correct. And that was created in the Soviet Union, if I recall correctly. That was made to limit the word usage and disincentivize people from acting out in political events. You know, why be in a discussion if you're gonna be called a racist or Nazi every time? You're gonna get scared. Most people, at least, are not gonna be able to respond to that. And they're just gonna not want to talk to that person. And that person is gonna so-called win the argument, just by calling people names. But that is made to destroy discussion and to make sure that it's gonna be one-sided politics. It's like the George Orwell, where they butcher the language, where they remove words that there won't be eventually words to criticize at all. Words won't really have any meaning. And basically, the European Union are becoming more and more socialist. I mean, it might sound far-fetched if you just gonna listen to the Soviet Union and European Union and the United Nations to make these assumptions, but there are far more things. And as I've mentioned, many policies that the socialist governments had. And each and every time socialism has arisen, it has damned the people. It simply just doesn't work. Just look at Venezuela, just look at North Korea, constantly over and over again. Look at the Soviet Union. That's what we're gonna get. And they're constantly pushing towards these agendas. People just need to wake up, and hopefully in time people will realize that the European Union isn't what they need. They need independence and strong allies, not a European Union that impoverishes your countries and makes them less safe to inhabit. A European Union that have forgotten the great sacrifices that the ancestors of these lands that have sacrificed for their children, for their legacy. And now we're just gonna throw it all away. At least I'm gonna denounce them, and hopefully in time more people will join me in doing so. And also a final thing before I finish the video. Madame Merkel, she's sort of going back and forth as she's in an election. She was saying that she wanted to, denounce her open border policy. We should secure our borders. We should throw out all of these millions of migrants that have come into our country, blah, blah, blah. But considering how Sweden have such a huge problem to throw out an 80,000 people, more than half of them have gone into hiding within the country, and no one knows who they really are and where they might be. I mean, they might have multi-identity, so it might be very difficult to find them. It's approximately gonna cost 300,000+ to find a person. So imagine that times 40,000. It's gonna be huge costs. So for Merkel to say, we're gonna remove 1 million people, alright, let's say it's gonna be the same for Germany. And they're gonna throw, we say, 30,000 euros. It's gonna be a bit more, I think, because euros are like 8 Swedish crowns. So let's say 30,000 times 500,000. That's 15 million euros it's gonna cost to try to remove those kinds of people. Who knows? It might be more, it might be less, but... Oh wait, it's not million, it's billion. Ha! 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 It's nothing, it's just millions, billions, whatever. Well, it's gonna cost 15 billion to remove that many people. It's a huge sum. But that's the tragic truth. And, well, 15 billion times 8 is gonna be far more, as you can probably imagine, because Swedish crowns are less worth than the euro, pound, dollar, etc. But recent article said that she went back to having open borders. So I am confused whether the news are screwing with my mind, or if she is that back and forth between her policies. But I think, no matter what she says, if she's gonna say for the election's sake that she's gonna remove the migrants and to close down the Germans' borders, I think she's gonna go back to her old ways as soon as she's elected. Because it's all about the power grab, and she's gonna convince the people, along with her media or propaganda networks, that she has done a great work and she's a hero for the German people, and she's the complete opposite of Hitler, which, is the most evil man, basically, in history. But I really hope, I really sincerely do hope that the German people will see through her lies and elect someone that will go opposed to her. And I think if she would go with this, oh, we have to close our borders, I think she would lose. Because there's the opposition party that has also campaigned for closed border much longer and have been vocal about it. So hopefully she will lose her influence, because most people in Europe don't want to adopt Muslims into their countries, according to recent polls. I think it was only like 20% or so that wanted. The other 80%, and they asked in 10 different countries in this poll. And the rest said no. Or I think perhaps some percent said that they didn't know. But anyways, I think if she's gonna continue with her open borders, hopefully she's gonna lose. Though she has been in power for a very long time, so who knows? And it's very possible they might also cheat with elections. You never know these days. Anyways, Angela Merkel, she's Europe's globalist master, so I think she's one to be on the lookout after. Because whatever she's doing is probably gonna bolster the globalist agenda. She's like the main man amongst the European leaders. I am the Senate, like he said in Star Wars. But I think that's it for me. And in the meanwhile, this is where I get off.